And we're live. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the MongoDB TV YouTube channel, LinkedIn, X, wherever you're joining us from. We're going to be talking about a really cool AI framework in TypeScript today. It's called Mastra. And with me, I have Shane Thomas. Welcome. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Great to be here, Jesse.
Nice. So if people are not familiar with Mastra, well, let's take a step back, Shane. Why don't you introduce yourself? Give us a 30-second. Who is Shane, and why are you here?
Shane Thomas. I'm one of the co-founders of Mastra. So Mastra's open source AI agent framework specifically for TypeScript. Essentially, it makes it easy to build and deploy AI agents and AI applications.
Nice. And I hear that a lot of the team is from another previous framework of sorts, right?
Yes. So I have two other co-founders. We were all at Gatsby. So Sam, he was a co-founder of Gatsby, and then Abhi was kind of the principal engineer, built most of Gatsby Cloud, and I was kind of an engineering manager, and then I led part of the product team for a while there as well. So yeah, we all kind of came over from Gatsby. Gatsby was acquired by Netlify. We were all at Netlify for various amounts of time, and then eventually we all found our way back to this problem.
Nice. So yeah, all of the people in the comments, if you love Gatsby, you've used it before, let us know. That's pretty cool. I have and loved it as well. So let me just share my screen here, and let's talk about Mastra. First of all, I love the landing page. As a person with ADD, I get here and then I forget why did I come, because I'm just scrolling around the landing page.
Well, I don't know if that's actually a good thing or a bad thing, but I'll take it as a good thing.
Yeah, it is for sure. I always love just cool aspects of landing pages, and this is a very nice one. So tell us a little bit more high level. Why Mastra? Why did it come about?
So we were originally building, of all things, a CRM. So we were trying to build, so that Sam, Abhi, and myself, we were trying to build a CRM that was really kind of like AI centric, or something where you would use, it would kind of, ultimately try to compete with Salesforce someday, but really start to be a well-designed CRM that would like appeal to founders and startups that are just starting their sales process. But we got to building all of the AI aspects of the CRM, and we realized that the tooling just wasn't very good. And so we used some of the other options that were out there at the time, and we just weren't very happy with it. So we kind of got to the point where we looked at each other and we said, we're kind of dev tools guys. Maybe we should just be doing the dev tools thing. And that's where Mastra kind of originated from. So the idea was that it shouldn't, even though Python was made sense for Python to be the framework that dominated the early days of AI, because it all spawned out of machine learning and kind of the research data science community. But there's no reason, especially now with most of it is just hitting different APIs, there's no reason that all that needs to live in Python. So there should be good tools for, JavaScript and TypeScript developers, which is what we were, right? We're web guys. We come from the web world. We want to have good tools for us as well. So we basically started to build the tool that we would have wanted when we were building the CRM. And that's really kind of how we came about.
Nice. That's how most tools and frameworks come about, right? A need, right? You find the need. You find out that other developers have that same need. Well, let's build a thing for it, and then it just grows and snowballs into something, right? That's amazing. So So now that's talking about from Python to JavaScript. I found that as well. Like my background is not in AI ML, but like I want to use these APIs, like you just said, like they're basically just APIs. So I want to use these, but I'm not a Python developer. I'm a JavaScript developer, TypeScript developer. And so in the early stages, it was very hard for web developers to use these tools without having to learn Python. So then, other frameworks came about, and Mastra, one of them. One of the other things I'm curious about is the Vercel AI SDK, and how does that operate with Mastra?
Yeah, so when we first started, we wanted to be completely independent, didn't want to tie ourselves to AI SDK at all. And we started building all like the model routing layer and all that. And we just realized, like, why are we reinventing the wheel? Like AI SDK already does model routing and tool calling really well. So better to build kind of on the backs of giants, right? Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and support it ourselves. So after we kind of like started down the path, very quickly we realized that this exists. And so Mastra's actually, if you use Mastra, you are using AI SDK, because under the hood, AI SDK does all the model routing. It facilitates all the tool calling. So we have a blog post kind of about this, around like how we build on top of AI SDK. But we try to give you like the whole, like the framework aspects. I really look at, it's kind of like AI SDK is like a toolkit. It's really good, but we're a complete framework. So we give you a lot more primitives, such as like the concepts of workflows, the concepts of agents, and soon kind of the concepts of like agent network, direct integration with MCP, a bunch of things that you kind of don't get with AI SDK, but you still get kind of whatever you could do with AI SDK, you could of course do now with Mastra, because it's just, you're using AI SDK anyways. So it's kind of it's a good pair. If you want something that's a little bit more structured, you want to get a little further faster, that's what we kind of built Mastra around.
Yeah, that's what I noticed as I was playing around with it as well. So like going down here, you spoke about agents. That is one of the key things here, and then memory, prompt tuning, tool calling, basically taking all of these concepts from, like you said, the AI SDK, and kind of creating a framework around them, I guess, right?
Yeah, we try to bundle them in really nice, easy to understand APIs. So you are writing code, but it doesn't feel like you have to write a lot of code to get pretty far. But you still have access to the code, because there's a lot of, like, on the other side, there's a lot of low code tools which are great to get pretty far. But then when you kind of run up against the edges, and it gets there, you at some point you run into some friction.
Yeah.
So I do think that we kind of want you to have access to the code, but we want to wrap it in a way that is approachable and easy to get started with.
Yeah, too much abstraction is a thing, right? You want to have some way to kind of dive in and modify things. So workflows, talk to us a little bit about workflows.
Yeah, workflows came about because we kind of say like there's this agentic spectrum of like how agentic is your application. On the one hand, you have what kind of, I would say, the dream scenario that everyone wants is this idea of like this agent network. There's a whole bunch of agents, you give it a task and it just goes off, and with a few system prompts, it does everything you want. That's the dream. That's not necessarily the reality, but that's maybe what we'll get to at some point. Then we have this concept of like agents, which you can give it tools, it can make decisions, you have maybe a really structured system prompt. But then on the other end, where you still want some level of like LLM calls, and you want it to feel agentic, but you do have more deterministic parts, you have this idea of workflows. So this is more structured, where there are parts of these that might call out to an agent or might call out to an LLM, but you have more structured step-by-step flows that are kind of built into your application. And this is really nice because you can still now get tracing on every step of every decision that was made, but it's a little bit more deterministic than just letting an agent kind of make use of it. The way that I often tie these things together is that as I kind of think of like, if I were to hire a customer success engineer for a job, I want to think of an agent as kind of like a humanoid type of system. I would, on the first day that person joined, I would give them a set of tools, Slack or Zendesk or whatever, right? So this customer success engineer is the agent. They get a set of tools that they can use. But then I also probably give them playbooks or run books that says when this request comes in, when this kind of support ticket comes in, follow these steps. But of course, that customer success engineer has to make decisions. That's kind of what a workflow is. So it's kind of like that step-by-step playbook that you can either give to an agent or just run independently. but it's a little bit more deterministic and it's a little bit more well-defined.
Yeah. I mean, you see that a lot with agents where you tell it to do something and it basically skips to the end and it assumes certain things, right? Whereas this is more like, make sure you do 1, 2, and 3 before you go to 4. So that's, and then when you do that with agents as well today, of course, things change every day. Agents are getting better every day. But today, when you break things down into small steps like this and then give those steps individually to the agent, you always have a better outcome. And so this is basically doing that ahead of time as well. That's amazing. And then so RAG of course is where MongoDB comes in currently with vector stores. But RAG, if you're listening in, watching, and you don't know what RAG is, retrieval augmented generation. It's just a way to add extra context to the LLM because the LLM only knows so much, right? You're giving it extra context, and so the ability to then bring that context in from a vector store, augment the LLM's knowledge, and then generate a response from that. So that's the basic high level of what RAG is. But and then agentic RAG, I guess that's just basically the tool calling aspect of it, right? So the ability for another LLM to
Oh, we lost you, Jesse. Jesse, I think you went muted after.
Can you hear me now?
I can. It sounds a little different though, like it might be a different mic.
Oh no, hang on a second.
No?
The joys of live stream.
Yeah, it wouldn't be live if there wasn't some kind of technical. I mean, yeah, I had the issue where I had to move locations because my internet signal wasn't good. Mic issues. It's all good.
Yeah, no, hang on a second. It's using my AirPods for some reason. It just decided to go ahead and switch. Let me see. Is this better?
Oh. Sounds silky smooth now. You got the mic back. Yeah, it's good.
I have no idea. Just like in the middle of talking, computer decides let's switch mics. I don't know why. Yeah. So I think I was maybe you lost me around.
That's how people know it's live, though, right? Oh, sorry to interrupt. That's how people this is live because it's not produced. It's not doctored after the fact. Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. No, I think you maybe lost me around agentic RAG. I don't know. Do you want to take it from there? Like, what is agentic RAG?
Yeah, the idea is, you do need to get context from different places. You probably have a knowledge store of some kind, whether that's a database or some kind of like content that you might want to feed into the LLM to use as context when it's generating whatever kind of response. So agentic RAG is just really equipping an agent with tools to look up the information on its own. So rather than just shoving it into the context, which is still a really good use case of RAG, and that's what most people start with, you may also want to say, like, we're just going to give the agent a tool, and that way when you ask questions, it has some kind of tool where it can go to the database, pull the information it needs, and then use it. And of course, there are things you have to do to set that up and security concerns around all that, but overall, like, it's incredibly flexible when you can set something up where your agent or your LLM can actually pull in the data that it needs to answer questions and make decisions.
Yeah, and that's really one of the major use cases, especially with enterprise, where every enterprise has its own custom information that it needs to utilize in some way through AI, and so like an LLM can't just go out to the internet and see your custom information, right? So that's the way to provide it through RAG. Now, one of the other things that I came across is this ops functionality here with evals, tracing, performance metrics. I've seen this before in other frameworks as well, but the ease of use here in Mastra kind of blew me away. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, we try to make it easy. So if you're using Mastra, you just get this out of the box. So we'll show this in a bit, I'm sure, but you do get this nice development playground. So when you're building, you can actually see the traces, the spans of what's going on. You can more easily debug when things go off the rails, which, this is AI, it definitely happens, right? The LLM isn't perfect. And so it gives you some of that visibility that you need to decide, do I need to, add some guardrails here? Do I need to change the system prompt? Do I need to, modify things? Or or at least get some visibility in what's happening with your application.
Exactly. Yeah. My computer just decided to switch again. And so again, if my audio kind of cuts out or whatever, let me know. But I think I'm back. Yeah, let's dive into some demo now. Let me share my other screen. So you stop sharing that. And let's share. Sure. By the way, what is your go-to IDE these days?
This is a good, I asked this, so I do a lot of live streaming on the Mastra account as well. And I ask this question all the time because it is contentious. People are like, are picking their sides. So funny enough, I use Windsurf and Cursor both.
Yep.
I would say I'm probably back to using Cursor slightly more right now, but I try to just use both because I do want to see like what's changing in each of them and how they compare. But it just kind of depends on if it's more front end focused, I'll use Windsurf because they have this nice like dev playground preview thing that you can pass in data from your components into the editor. If it's more back end focus, it's Cursor, but I bounce back and forth. Actually, what I'll often do is I'll be building like at the back, because Mastra can run as a standalone server, so you can like connect it to like a Next.js front end or whatever. So I'll often have like the front end app in Windsurf and then the back end Mastra application in Cursor, and then that's how I differentiate like which one's in which. So I don't know. It's a constant iteration of like just testing and trying out different things. What about you?
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. I swap back and forth. Lately, I've been using a new one called AMP Code, and it's actually it's a VS Code extension, but you can use it in Cursor, etc. But yeah, it's got this built-in like task functionality where it breaks things down into tasks. Yeah, I really love it. So there's a question here from a friend of MongoDB. He's an employee, Mike Lynn. How do you persist memory between steps in the workflow? Do you permit user input in the workflows? If so, how have you implemented async step through? Is that?
Yeah, great question. So so your workflow state is persisted. So you get to specify a storage engine when you set up Mastra, and your workflow state is persisted in that storage engine, which means that you can access inputs and outputs from every previous step in the workflow. So you can basically pass data through. There's also this concept of like runtime context is what we call it, but you can basically store state in there as well and retrieve in different steps. We do have the ability to call suspend and resume. So you can build human in the loop type interactions where you get to a step and then you suspend, and that stores the workflow state in whatever storage you set up. And then you could leave that for 5 minutes, or you could leave that for 2 days, and then it waits for basically the request to come in with the data that will like resume, and then it picks up the data and then it resumes. So this could be, a workflow state that has a confirmation that's a simple yes or no, right? And then the human has to say like, do you want to continue? Yes. But the workflow state will just suspend and be stored in storage until it receives that response with that, that run ID of that workflow that will then kind of re-trigger it and start it back up.
Nice. Another question. Oh yeah, I mentioned the IDEs. Yeah, Cursor, Windsurf, and the new one I've been using is AMP Code, AMP. All right, so let's do a dive here into just creating a demo Mastra app. So I'm going to do npx create Mastra at latest, and then we're going to just accept all the defaults here and then load in like the default demo here, just to show the viewers like how easy it is to get up and running and like get a grasp of the interface, etc. And this just takes under a minute to install. And let's see if there's any other questions here. Nice, I've built something that wants to be Mastra. I love what I'm seeing so far. Struggling too much with the human in the loop. Okay, yeah, human in the loop. That is an issue as well. Something you have to think about sometimes. We'll choose source. We'll do agents and workflows. We're going to add tools. We'll use OpenAI. I'll add the API key off screen. Add an example, yes. Now this is a cool thing here. I love this. So make your AI IDE into Mastra Expert. So you can choose to install the MCP server for Mastra from here, so that whenever you're using Cursor, etc., it will just automatically know Mastra and have the docs, right?
Yeah. Also, I
That's
see some
amazing.
weird. Did you see like a syntax error pop up in the? I don't
Oh, I
know what.
did.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That's the first time I've seen that, but looks like it still worked. But yes, that Mastra
Still
docs.
working and light.
Oh, yeah, I lost your mic again. But I'll talk about the Mastra MCP doc server real quick, because that was something we realized, and maybe you've all realized it using just agentic code editors. You know, specifically, like I've always like struggled it like with Tailwind, and it always like would pick the different version of Tailwind than my project was using, and it's almost like, you know, Cursor or Windsurf would never know, and it would often propose things that were on wrong versions. But we struggled because our users didn't, you know, they wanted to use Cursor and Windsurf with Mastra, but of course Mastra's pretty new. Like the editors or the models didn't know about Mastra, and so we built this MCP docs server where if you install it and now you ask questions about Mastra, it has access to all the docs, so it can essentially, in what is, you know, I guess you could consider it RAG almost as a way, like agentic RAG. The agent can look up information from the docs and then return that to you. So it basically makes your code editor like a Mastra docs expert.
That's
So
awesome.
it's a good test of our docs too, because if the agent can't write the code right, how could we ever expect a human to, right?
Exactly. Love that. MongoDB recently also released a MCP. Just to plug that real quick. You can include that MCP as well along with Mastra, and then you should be good to go. All right, let me add this back to stage. So I added my my OpenAI API key to my environment variables off screen. Then we're going to do npm run dev here, and let's just kind of show this off. So this is going to open up on localhost 4111, and let's zoom in a bit here. So
and I'm still just seeing your code.
oh yeah, you are, aren't you? Okay, stop, and let's swap to Master Playground. There we go. All right. Amazing. All right. So walk us through this.
Yeah, so you, by default, you get a playground. The goal is it's like your local development environment. It's so you can test things as you're building it. You know, oftentimes when you're writing code, you want some, you know, if you're building a full stack application, you can kind of test end to end, right? But in this case, you're kind of building an agent. So how do you test an agent? How do you test the tools? All those things that kind of compose an AI application. We wanted to provide a really easy interface for you to confirm it's working as you're kind of iterating and building it. And then eventually you're going to hook it up to some front end at some point, right? Mm-hmm. But it's easier to just test in isolation first, make sure it's all working, you're getting the right responses, and then you can kind of wire it up to whatever, whether that's a mobile app, whether that's a Next.js web app, whatever it might be.
Nice.
Yeah, and so by default, you get agents. And so in this case, you can see we have, this example has a weather agent, and it looks like the right side is cut off a little bit. I don't know if you're seeing that too. Oh, that's a little better, but
I zoomed in a bit.
Yeah, there we go. That looks good though. So you can see you get kind of the default chat interface. It looks a little bit like, you know, ChatGPT or Claude, because that's how people understand how to talk to, you know, agents in these kind of systems. But on the right, it tells you what the system prompt is. It has options to configure the model settings. It has access to like the tools itself. So you can kind of like play around with it a little bit. What endpoints, you know, because it's all available through an API. That's what Mastra gives you at the end of the day. You don't have to use it as an API. You can just import the class directly in your code if you're, you know, if you want to bundle it with your Next.js app, or if you want to run a backend separate from your front end, it gives you an API to do that as well. So it kind of gives you quite a bit of flexibility in how you want to do that.
Nice. I see memory is on, so we have persistent memory there.
Yeah, so you can just chat with it in the main window there, and you can ask what this is just a very simple example, the very basic weather example that a lot of people do, right?
Exactly. So we see it's calling the weather tool, and there we go. That's accurate.
Yeah. So it just and if you go to the left sidebar and click on tools, if you go down to tools, you can also just test this tool in isolation. So what I tell people to do is you build your tools, and then you can run it. It'll give you can make sure the tools are working, and then you build the agent. You give the agent the tools. You make sure the agent's working, and then you kind of then connect the agent to the front end. So it's kind of like a multi-step process. And if you go to workflows actually as well, there's like an example workflow in there. And so workflow is just, multiple steps. In this case, it fetches the weather, and then it calls an agent to plan activities. So it does a few different steps. You can see first it's fetching the weather, then it's going in as planning the activities. This is going to take a while. It actually,
okay.
Yeah, it was actually pretty quick. And then if you go on the results on the right, there you go, it popped in. So it gives you a lot of data, right? And so you get access to this entire data. You can see the output there of what the agent returned, which is just based on the weather. It'll plan activities that are weather appropriate. So if it was going to rain, it would probably more likely plan, indoor activities. If it's nice outside, it'll probably plan outdoor activities.
Yeah, some beach volleyball, but there's no beaches in Houston, so I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But no, this is a very good, like you said, this is the standard, demo example, right? But this shows you exactly what's possible, what it's capable of.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, this one's a very simple 2-step workflow. You can give workflows to agents, so you can kind of compose these things in really complex ways, but you can also kind of look at the simple examples in isolation and see how you might start to piece some of these different components together.
Nice. Anything else within the dashboard here that you'd like to show off before we look and dive into the code?
I mean, that's the kind of the main part of it. You can also, as you can see, you could build your own MCP server and deploy that as well with Mastra. So if you just wanted to build and kind of distribute an MCP server, again, oftentimes you're building an MCP server to give to agents, right? So MCP servers, for the most part, most MCP servers are just collections of tools today. I mean, there's a lot more to the spec than that, but that's what most people think of when they think of MCP. But you can either build individual tools and just give them to your agents, or if you wanted the tools to be accessible to others, you can build and actually, kind of deploy an MCP server so it can be used by other agents or other people's agents that they're building.
Nice. And then what's agent networks?
So agent networks, we currently kind of call it experimental, but we're about ready to release kind of a more official version of it. But this is the idea of, you have this concept of agents, which we saw above, which can have access to tools and workflows. But an agent network is essentially a collection of agents that work together. So it basically has kind of like a supervisor agent, and then you has a collection of like sub agents that it can call and can orchestrate tasks between. It's the least deterministic of all of, like, that's why I said you have like workflows, you have agents, and you have networks of agents. So it's very good for like research type tasks, right? But probably less good for very discrete tasks that need high accuracy, because it is slightly less reliable. I think as the models improve, you'll be able to have more and more things that can be accomplished through this kind of concept of agent networks. But today, it's kind of, I would consider it, even when the code is stable, which it's almost stable, the concept, I would say, is still very experimental, because it can get kind of wild when you have this like concept of all these agents just working together without input from you. You kind of give it a task and it just runs and it goes. But it does allow you to build some really like complex systems of agents.
Nice. Mike is asking about AGUI. Is that kind of what you're referring to here?
So this is a little different. So agent networks are a little different, but yes, AGUI. So we're good friends with the Copilot Kit, and we just actually did a webinar workshop with them a couple weeks ago. And so Mastra supports AGUI, which is really, I kind of talked about it, like Mastra gives you the back end. You got to connect it to a front end. And so there are different ways to do that. And AGUI is definitely one of the best ways to like connect a front end application to some kind of like agent or backend and make sure you're getting, you know, like streaming and really good UX, UI kind of built in.
Nice, nice. Let's swap back over to the code, and we'll dive into that a bit. Let's see, Mastra demo. Yes, make sure I'm sharing the right one. Awesome. All right, so we have that one running, but let's just let's go dive through the code here. So under source, maybe we can look at the tool first. So we've got this weather tool. So pretty simple, honestly. So we've got this create tool from Mastra, and of course we're using Zod to define some interfaces and schemas here. We've got this actual weather tool, get weather function, and then we've got these different condition variables here. So there's really not a lot to this. And this is the main bit here is the create tool, right? So where we give it an ID, we give it a description, the input schema and the output schema, what we're going to give it, what we're expecting back from it, and then the execute phase, which is the get weather function. So in the get weather, we're using this geocoding API open, etc. Like so to get the geo coordinates, right, of the city that you're looking for. And then after that, we are passing that longitude, latitude, etc. into this API.openmateo.com, etc. to get the actual weather info from there, and then returning what we were expecting to return, right, in this this specific structure here. Pretty simple, honestly, right? Did I miss anything there?
No, I mean, that's the idea is we like to say a tool is just a function.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when you think about tools, it's just all you're doing when you create an agent and give it tools is you're giving the LLM permission to execute this code. And of course, the LLM isn't executing the code. What happens is you send the prompt to the LLM tells you, okay, you need to execute this function. And of course, then, you know, it comes back to you. This runs this code, and then the result of this is passed back to the LLM to then kind of process that and provide some kind of like response with that data. So there's kind of like a multiple hops happening here when you send that first thing where LLM decides, okay, run this code, but it's just running a function, right? In this case, it's a pretty simple function. And then it just passes the data back to the LLM to then do something with that information once the function returns.
Yeah. So yeah, really no AI functionality in this, but it's the AI that's running the function, I guess.
Yeah. Just at the end of the day, it's just a function with the only difference between that and a normal JavaScript function is it has a more defined input-output schema, right? That's really the only difference. And I will say one thing that is important on tools is the description of tools really does matter, because that description is what the LLM reads and knows what it does. So if you go up to where in the create tool where you provide that description, the LLM has access to that. It knows that I can call this tool in this scenario. So if someone's asking for weather, it reads this description. So if you have more complex tools, you might want that description to be much more detailed. So, you know, I always say like someone with like, if you're going to show this to a coworker without context, would they understand when they should call this function? And if they can't, you can't expect an LLM to be able to understand it.
Nice. That makes total sense. Yeah. So then on the agent itself, again, like very simple code, like under 30 lines. We're using, again, the AI SDK here. So very integral part of Mastra. So using the OpenAI SDK, OpenAI from that. No, let me rephrase that. We're using OpenAI from the AI SDK. Too many AIs in there. Agent from Mastra, memory. This example here is using libsql as the store. And then the weather tool, we're bringing in that tool that we defined earlier. And then we're just telling this agent what it is, right? So again, some prompt engineering probably goes into this in the instructions, telling it which model, which tools it has available to it. It can have multiple tools, correct? And then where to keep memory.
Yep. Yeah. And we choose libsql by default, so you can just run it locally and everything just works. But ultimately what you end up doing is you have storage for memory. You also could have storage for other things like RAG, which, you know, we're of course going to talk about. And we used to just kind of hide it. And then you of course, when you got to deploy, people would run into problems and say like, I didn't even know memory had storage because we just put in libsql under the hood. Now we make it very explicit because typically you're going to, when you get to production, you're going to probably pick something else, right? You might be picking Mongo. You might want to store your memories in like a MongoDB or some kind of key value store or something. There's multiple different options, but we did want to start making it very apparent that like you get up and running really fast, but we made some decisions for you to make that happen. Now, when you get to productionizing, you're going to probably swap this out for different providers, or you might choose to swap it out depending on where you're deploying.
Yeah, I think that's another one of the key differentiators with Mastra is the plug and play ability. Like you just swap things out very easily. These are just packages, plugins that you just swap out if you want to change the store, if you want to change the vector database, etc. It's just all very, very easy. And that's really what struck me about just running these examples, is how easy it was to get up and running with Mastra. Let's see. Let's look at the workflow next. So again, OpenAI from the AI SDK, agent from Mastra, and we've got some create steps and create workflows, and then some schema stuff with Zod. So here is the agent. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I will say, I don't even like we should go through this example, but I'll tell you why I don't like this example, because it's not how I would build it. But when you want to create a getting started experience, you want it to be self-contained, so you could have the workflow without having the agent. But here we're defining, it is showing some flexibility though, because we're defining an agent in line, basically dynamically, right? We just create this agent and then we use it immediately following. But because of that, this agent doesn't show up in the playground because it wasn't actually like a registered agent with the Mastra class. So,
I see.
but it does allow you, but it does show the flexibility of you can kind of just like create an agent and use it, and then immediately like it's only used in this one case. Or what you could also do is reference an agent that you kind of create more globally and you kind of use within your application. So,
so normally you would take this agent piece out here, you would abstract this out into another file, etc., and then
I would put it in the agents folder, and then I would, and then if you go to source Mastra index really quick, just that right below where you're at now, this is where you're basically kind of registering your different agents. So you register your workflows, your agents, and now the cool thing about this is anywhere in your application, if you are bundling this together, you just import the Mastra class and you have access to everything. All the tracing happens. You just, you import Mastra from this file, and then you can do Mastra.get agent, whatever agent's in the list, .get workflow, and you just run it from there. And you get all the tracing, everything built in, but you're just basically passing this one Mastra class around through your application. Now, the alternative is if you deploy it separately, you kind of want to separate out your front end from your back end. Then you're able to just you just deploy this, and this class powers the API, and then you can just access it from a GET request or a POST request, or you can use our client SDK on the front end and interact with kind of the Mastra backend server wherever you have that running. So
I think it's important to kind of dive into that a little bit. You said you can separate, etc. You can have Mastra basically as its own backend by itself and connect to any front end. But you also have integrations with like Next.js, for instance, where it could live all inside Next.js, and you're using all together as well, correct?
Exactly, yeah. So if you, and typically we did that for a reason, because a lot of people, when they're getting started, we'll just use Next.js as an example, because we do have quite a few of our customers that use Next.js. And they say, well, I just want to add like some agents to my application. And that works really great. You can, it's just TypeScript, right? So you just bundle it with your Next.js, you deploy it to wherever you're deploying that, whether that's, Vercel or Netlify or wherever, Cloudflare, wherever you might be deploying your app. And it just runs, right? It just works. And so you're just passing this Mastra class around through your application. But then often as projects get more complex, maybe you have like a desktop or mobile app on top of your web app, or maybe you have one agent that actually serves multiple web applications. Now you want to maybe think about, there's extra complexity. You almost want to pull out into like you have like your AI agents service, right? Your AI application is like a separate service that your other applications interact with. And we do see this like with larger companies that almost have like teams that are responsible for doing the AI parts. Then they'll have a front end team or web app team or mobile app team. And so they'll basically build the application separately and then provide, like, here's the contract, use the client SDK to get to actually interact with these agents and these workflows. And if you use the JavaScript client SDK, it's the same kind of APIs as if you were just passing this class around. You call get agent, you call .stream or .generate on it. So it should feel the same whether it's disconnected or not. I mean, there's some slight differences here and there, but ultimately we want the APIs. So you almost don't care if it's in the same spot bundled together or if it's in two separate locations. And it looks like, I don't know if we lost Jesse or if I was lost. Well, I guess if you are still listening, let me know in the chat. Okay, so we did lose Jesse. So I was having internet problems earlier today. I don't know why. They're working on some stuff outside my house, and so I think it kind of caused an issue with the internet. But so I am. So I didn't know if it was me. How long have we been at Mastra? So we really started Mastra kind of back early October is when if you were watching since the beginning, the team, we were originally building a CRM, and we kind of realized that we needed to, we were building all the AI parts of the CRM and building a lot of the tooling ourselves, and decided that was the bigger problem we needed to solve. And yeah, so we've been at it since October, and we did, kind of go through Y Combinator, January through March. And so we kind of went through that, we're growing the team a little bit, and yeah, ultimately just working with a lot of really interesting AI use cases right now that are trying to, I mean, we have people building coding agents with Mastra. We have people building, there's one company that was using Mastra to build a CAD design for aeronautics and space travel, right? They're building CAD diagrams, but they're using AI agents in it to basically make it easier to build these actual CAD diagrams of rocket ships, which is way above my level of understanding. So I do see some questions here. Is it possible to stream responses of a workflow to catch when it's on a specific step? So we did just recently release, so it was always possible, but now we made it easier. I think it's called workflow streaming is basically what we've been calling it. And what it allows you to do is you can basically, on your front end, you can kick off a workflow, and you can basically get back a stream of responses. So you can then visually change, the front end however you want to display the steps to the user, to show different components when different steps are. So you can kind of build very visually interactive front ends that can kind of, stream the response from workflows. You're back, Jess.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. This is the day of technical hurdles.
Wow. Okay. So I'm so glad that you are so used to live streaming, etc., and you just kept going. I'm sure you didn't miss a beat there. But yeah, my computer literally just crashed. It just stopped and rebooted. So no didn't give me any chance to do anything. So let me share my screen again, and let's see if we can get.
I'm glad you're back. I was just answering some questions. It took me a minute to because I was having internet issues before. It took me a minute to realize, I thought it was me. I was like, oh no, someone outside. There's people working outside my house. So I was like, maybe they hit the fiber line or whatever. It's gone.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Let's share. Let's go to the next demo here. So I think we kind of looked at the workflows, we looked at the agents tools, the where you register everything in that index, right? And so this is a demo, very similar. I've taken that initial demo from Mastra and kind of expanded upon it and added to it. And so the first thing that I did here is I created this embeddings script. And this is going to allow us to, I basically have added some RAG functionality to the Mastra demo. And what we have in MongoDB is a movies collection. It's a sample data, and it has around 20,000 movies in this database. And so what I've done here is, and I can share this repo with everyone if you want to and dive in a little bit deeper into it. But basically what I've done is created a script that goes through all of the movies, and let's start with the main here, is it basically processes all of the movies, and it does this in batches because there's 20,000, and you've got API limits, etc., right? So we connect to MongoDB and we pull in all of those movies, and then here we're using vector store is from Mastra. So we are using MongoDB vector from Mastra here, creating this vector store using our MongoDB database, telling it which database to use here. And then in our vector store, we're creating our index, and then we are adding into the vector store all of these embeddings that we're creating using OpenAI. So let's see, right here is where we're creating, telling it how many dimensions, cosine in the index there. And then let's see, after we've processed all of these, here's where we're creating the embedding. So let's go up here to this function in create embeddings. We're creating an embedding on the plot field. So every movie, it has IMDb ratings, it has the title, it has the plot, a bunch of other metadata as well, but we're using the plot field specifically, and we're also taking all of the metadata and we're creating an embedding around that as well. So we know like the year it was released, the cast, the director, all of that stuff in the metadata as well. And so we're batching all of this, putting that, taking that as chunks, sending that through to OpenAI to create those embeddings, and then again using Mastra to store these embeddings back into MongoDB. This script is meant for like a one-time use, right? So this is again one of those scenarios where enterprises have their own data, and in order to search that data through vector search, we have to first vectorize it. We have to create embeddings for this data, and so this is a one-time initial thing, but then it's a continuous thing as your data updates and changes, right? So we run through this, we process these 20,000 movies, we create embeddings for them, we store them in MongoDB, and then we actually go ahead and use Mastra to search over these. Anything you want to add to this like initial embedding part, Shane?
No, I just think it's, if you haven't done stuff with RAG, and we had that kind of diagram on the Mastra website, which is, you can see in many other places because it's very, similar process, but you have this idea of like deciding how you want to chunk and create these embeddings, right? Like that's kind of an important decision, and in what you use for like embedding models and all this stuff does kind of impact the results later on. So there's, unfortunately, it's not like there's one size fits all. Like it's a little bit of trial and error of like, what data do you need? How do you want to chunk it? How do you want to embed it? So it's kind of confusing. I knew it at least confused me when I was first like trying to understand how RAG worked, because my biggest question was like, you're telling me there's not like a one right way to do this. I have to just like try out a bunch of different things. And so I think there are probably some tools that help you maybe make those decisions, but I'm not aware of any that are very good yet. So I think it is a little bit of a, like, you have to kind of trial and error as you're kind of understanding how it works. And then you can maybe start to pick out the best ways to maybe go about doing this.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, it is definitely trial and error when it comes to chunking. And chunking basically means you have this really long PDF, and we don't want to create an embedding on the entire PDF. We want to find portions of the PDF, right? And we want to whittle that down into small chunks. so that it's more easily searchable. We find exact things within the PDF, right? So one very naive, easy way to do it is just sentence structure. Like you can just chunk on sentences. That's a very easy way. But maybe you want to chunk on paragraphs, or maybe you want to chunk on if it's markdown and you want to say, split this markdown by headings, and then etc. Like there's many different ways to do it. But if we go up to the process movie chunks function here, we actually see in here that we're using mdocument, and that again is from Mastra. So mdocument, and there's many different methods from this. Like let's see, there is from HTML, from JSON, from Markdown, from text. So we're using from text here, and then we're passing in our movie plot. And so this helps us to like break this down. And so docs here, we're telling it which strategy to use. I'm using recursive, which basically means take the chunk, but then go a little bit on each side, I believe, and take a little extra so that we have a bit of overlap, right? And then here's like how much overlap. I've got all of these like parameterized at the top here, but like you could set your chunk size, set your overlap, set your separator. If you want to like separate on sentences, you put a period in there and it'll just separate on sentences, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So it's there are some dials you can turn, but of course, like I said, it is, if you're just watching this and you don't know, if you've never done this before, you like, okay, chunk size separators, like it seems like you're making a lot of decisions, and you kind of are, but we try to provide you some like relatively easy defaults that can get you going, and you can kind of start to see how it works. But yeah, I think what you have here is like a pretty common of what I always kind of go to when I'm starting any kind of like RAG project. And then maybe depending on your data, you'll change it, but it's at least a good starting point for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what I also like around it is we're saving all the metadata back as well. So when you think about vector search on its own, it's great, but it's even better when you have extra things that you can filter on. So we're adding those chunks back to these documents in MongoDB. We're also adding all of the metadata along with it. So you could filter out, let's say the user's asking for movies in the year 1960, right? So you can do a pre-filter on all the movies in 1960, and then have vector search find whatever they're looking for, horror movies in 1960 or whatever, something like that. So then vector search can be a little bit more accurate because you're already doing a pre-filter on it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And metadata filtering is very important as well. So that's a good call out for sure.
Yeah. And then this is just where I defined, these are basically all of the knobs that you can dial here at the top of this file. Yeah.
So you only have a few there.
Yeah, there's only a few. Yeah. So let's go. So we looked at this weather tool in the original demo, and that's still in this demo as well. But I added this movie RAG tool. And so let's go through this real quick. So we're using, again, create tool. This time we're adding in the MongoDB vector from Mastra. And so let's go through here. We've got, let's see. So we'll start here at the tool. So we're creating this tool, giving it an ID. Again, a very descriptive description of what it is, so that the LLM knows when and how to use it, right?
Yeah, I always like it's a good description if you have to have a side scroll to read the whole thing. That's usually
there you go.
It's a good rule of thumb. Like it's right on the edge. You have to have a little bit of a side scroll. That's probably a good enough description.
Okay, awesome. All right, I did good. So we're defining our input schema, our output. What are we giving it? What are we expecting back? And then here's our execution, our search movies function. So in the search movies, this is where all the magic happens. We are creating an embedding, first of all, on the user's query. So we vectorized our proprietary information, our movies. We vectorized all of that. And we put it into this multi-dimensional space, right? And so we have to take the user's query and we have to vectorize it. We have to create an embedding for it to put it in that same multi-dimensional space so that we can do a search with it. So we're creating this embedding for the user's query. And then we're querying the vector store here from, again, using Mastra. So query, telling it which index to use. We're giving it that user's query, which is now an embedding. And we're telling it how many to return, how many results should we return. So there's a limit here. We're multiplying it by 3 just to give us some extra, making it a little bit more deterministic. As we go down, we'll whittle that down a little bit, because basically what's happening here, if you think about it, is we've created multiple chunks for these movies. Now, if a movie plot, and what I did here was on sentence structure. So if a movie plot has multiple sentences, it's going to have multiple chunks. And so we might find in vector search, we might return a movie multiple times because we've hit on multiple chunks within that same movie. And so what we want to do is a little bit of deduplication, because we don't, in our results, we don't want to return the same movie multiple times, right? That obviously this is the movie we want you to watch, and we just give you the same movie like 5 times. So a little bit of deduplication is happening here if we return multiple chunks from the same movie. And then we're creating a map here to kind of help with that. And let's see, down here, we are, this is where we are limiting how many we actually return, and then just returning these results here. So returning the movies that we found, the total results, and the search query back to the LLM. Long-winded way of saying we're using vector search right here in this function to return the information. And so we've created this tool. We can now use this tool in the agent. So in the agent here, we're importing this other tool. And so I changed a little bit. So I added the tool here. I gave it this extra tool in the tools definition. And then I told it what extra capability it now has of searching for movies. So we should probably test it out and see if it works. Let's see.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let me just make sure. I think I'm still running the other one. Let me shut that one down real quick. Let's see. Oh no, my computer restarted. No, I'm not. Okay.
You're starting fresh.
There we go. So npm run dev. And then
it is just hanging.
Yeah. Let's see, I didn't change anything actually there.
Yeah, I would expect it to give you an error or something. It's almost like it's not.
Here, let's try this again. npm run. There we go. That was weird. Okay, so let's open this up, and then I'm going to have to reshare. Let's see, stop sharing and share Master Playground. There we go. How's that? Okay, cool. So now we have under agents the weather and movie assistant. And so if we go in here, I can still do what is the weather in Houston, and it should call the weather tool. Nice. Gives me that. That works perfect. And then let's say, give me the top movies with, I don't know, give me an actor.
I don't know. Tom Cruise? I don't know.
Tom Cruise.
I panicked.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. Top movies with Tom Cruise. All right, so it's calling the movie rag tool. And here we go. Risky Business, Mission Impossible. All right. I don't know if this is in like 1, 2, 3 order as like best or whatever. I said give me the top. So I don't know if it's like ranking it somehow as well. But this is what it returned. And it's pulling all of this from MongoDB.
Yeah, and I do recognize some of those movies, so I at least know it's correct.
Yes, yeah, it is definitely not making things up. This is accurate. I think I've seen all of these movies.
Yes,
yeah.
Edge of Tomorrow, definitely underrated. I like that one.
Yes, for sure. I was thinking the same thing. That's kind of when I was saying, like, is this like actually in
because I definitely put that above the one above it. But.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, I don't know if I've seen that one.
I have. It's okay. You're not missing that one.
Nice. And so then again, we have, here's the instructions here on the side. We can see the tools that it's using. Again, you can play with the model settings, endpoints, etc. Nice. We are unfortunately all of the technical difficulties, etc. I think we got everything in here. We're right around time, so I just want to make sure that we save a little bit of time for any last words. Shane, anything else that you want that we maybe missed, that we didn't talk about, that you just want to make sure that we get out there?
I think we covered most of it. Definitely follow Mastra on all the social channels, or follow me. We're going to be posting about some cool stuff. We do have this Mastra course that's coming out soon, and
Nice.
it's going to be pretty cool. It's not your traditional course, so I'll tease that it's going to be unlike any course you've taken before. So at minimum, I would encourage people to check it out when it drops. I'm hoping it's going to come out tomorrow, but if I can't get it out tomorrow, then it'll be like early next week. We kind of just launch things when they're ready around here, so it's almost. But I would just tease that that's coming. It's going to be really cool. We're excited about it.
Ping me for sure when that's ready, because yeah, I love checking out new courses. And then yeah, we'll be sure to share that as well. That sounds amazing. One quick last question here. Does it also store the chat context? So again, Mastra has memory built in. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that answer there.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So you can turn on memory. By default, it's not necessarily on. You can turn it off, and which means that every request to the agent is like a new request. Or you can kind of turn on, and you saw there's a lot of dials that you can turn with setting up RAG. There's a large amount of dials you can turn when kind of like trying to tune memory. I do think that we have a lot of really good configuration options, but memory is something that people are getting more and more opinionated about. There's more and more white papers coming out of like how you should do memory with agents. And so I think we're going to continue to improve memory over time. I think what we have now is it has all the things you'd need for basic memory implementation. So it stores all the messages. It then can do like retrieval on those messages. There's a whole bunch of things you can kind of set up. But it does handle, so it does store the chat context. It does have this idea of threads where you can kind of store memory for specific threads and all that.
Nice. That's kind of the point of a framework like this. It's trying to think about all the things that you need to think about ahead of time, but still giving you a lot of flexibility as well. So I really like that. Amazing. So again, sorry for the technical details, the technical issues, but thank you, Shane, for joining. We'll have you on again for sure in the future.
Yeah, Jesse, excited, and now I need you to come over to the Mastra live stream sometime soon.
Yeah, just let me know. I'll be there.
All right.
All right. Thanks all.
Yeah. See you, everyone.